Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I'm excited because I'm going to be doing a video that I've never really done before. I've never really made TBR lists on my channel. It's not something I really do. I've had like goals of what I want to accomplish or books that I've just hauled that I'm going to read soon. But I was going through my bookshelves and I'm kind of rearranging them, and one of my goals for this year was to try and read more nonfiction. And I realized I have quite a lot. And some of these books I've spoken about on my channel before, and some I don't think I ever have, but I have next to me an entire stack of books that I'm planning on getting through, hopefully within the next 2 years. I'm really slow when it comes to reading nonfiction, or I get distracted very easily, or I read them in like piecemeal over long periods of time. But I do have a large stack of nonfiction books that I'm really excited to eventually get to. Some I've actually already started and I'm only a couple chapters into, and then kind of put them on the back burner in between more of my fiction reads. So yeah, this is going to be my TBR list of spooky, macabre, dark, whimsical, nonfiction, morbid curiosity style reads. This is not something that is like going to be read necessarily anytime soon. Some of them absolutely will be, but not all of them. But this is just my collection of kind of darker nonfiction that if you are somebody who's very into the kind of horror, gothic, and thriller fiction that I talk about on my channel, I feel like you might really like. So first up, and I've spoken about this once before on my channel and highlighted this book, and I have yet to read it yet, which I'm very bummed about. I'm going to hopefully get this read this year. But this is A Very Nervous Person's Guide to Horror Movies by Matthias Klassen. I'm going to read the back of the book for y'all real quick. So it says, films about chainsaw killers, demonic possession, and ghostly intruders make some of us scream with joy. But while horror fans are attracted to movies designed to scare us, others shudder already at the thought of the sweat-drenched nightmares that terrifying movies often trigger. The fear of sleepless nights and the widespread beliefs that horror movies can have negative psychological effects and display immorality make some of us very nervous about them. But should we be concerned? In this book, horror expert Matthias Klassen delves into the psychological science of horror cinema to bust some of the worst myths and correct the biggest misunderstandings surrounding the genre. In short and highly readable chapters, peppered with vivid anecdotes and examples, he addresses the nervous person's most pressing questions. What are the effects of horror films on our mental and physical health? Why do they often cause nightmares? Aren't horror movies immoral and a bad influence on children and adolescents? Shouldn't we be concerned about what the current popularity of horror movies says about society and its values? While media psychologists have demonstrated that horror films indeed have the potential to harm us, Klassen reveals that the scientific evidence also contains a second story that is often overlooked. Horror movies can also help us confront and manage fear and bring us closer together. If you guys have ever seen my Scarapi series that I do on my channel, it focuses a lot on the idea of horror media and the consumption of horror media to benefit one's mental health, and I feel like this book is going to talk about a lot of how film benefits that as well. I will be reading this hopefully in the next few months, and I will do a full deep dive video on this book as part of my Scarapi series. Okay, next up. I've also spoken about this book on my channel before, and this is The Trial of Lizzie Borden by Kara Robertson. I recently visited the Lizzie Borden house out in Fall River, Massachusetts, which is right outside of Providence, Rhode Island, and I am fascinated. So I really want to read more about the Lizzie Borden murder trial and all of the potential suspects, whether we think Lizzie did it or not. I know there's a lot of speculation on that. So that is what this book is about, and I will read the back real quick for y'all. When Andrew and Abby Borden were brutally hacked to death in Fall River, Massachusetts in August of 1892, the arrest of the couple's daughter Lizzie turned the case into international news and her trial into a spectacle unparalleled in American history. The popular fascination with the Borden murders and its central enigmatic character has endured for more than 100 years, but the legend often outstrips the story. Based on transcripts of the Borden legal proceeding, contemporary newspaper articles, previously withheld lawyers' journals, unpublished local reports, and recently unearthed letters from Lizzie herself, The Trial of Lizzie Borden is a definitive account of the Borden murder case and offers a window into America in the Gilded Age, showcasing its most deeply held convictions and its most troubling social anxieties. Okay, so I really love true crime. I listen to Morbid, a true crime podcast, almost every single day. So that one I'm very excited about. And I think I only have one other true crime book in here. But before I get to that, I want to talk about these books. These are the Haunted America series. And somebody on my channel actually reached out and told me that they were a series back when I read The Ghost of Manhattan, and I have since then purchased a bunch, and I just finished Haunted Providence, based on Providence, Rhode Island, and I have these 3 to read. So I have Haunted New Orleans, History and Hauntings of the Crescent City by Troy Taylor. I'm not going to read the backs of the books for y'all just to save time, and because this is literally about the history of the haunted places in the cities that I'm talking about. So I will be reading this before I go to New Orleans, which is hopefully happening this year. And then I will be reading, hopefully in June, Ghosts of Salem, Haunts of the Witch City by Sam Baltrisus. I hope that's how you say it. I will be going to Salem for my birthday in July. I'm very excited about that, and I will be reading this book before then. And then one of my more recent videos, I just picked this up and spoke about this in my last book haul. So this is A History of Vampires in New England by Thomas D'Agostino, which is all about the vampire paranoia, I guess you would say, that took place in New England between like the 17 and 1800s, most famously Mercy Brown. And I think it'll delve hopefully into the science behind what actually caused the vampire scare. So very excited to read this one as well. Okay, so next up is The Reason for the Darkness of the Night, Edgar Allan Poe and the Forging of American Science by John Tresh. I'm not going to read the back of this book because I've done it before on my channel, and I think it took me like 5 minutes to get through it. It was very, very long. So I recently read this collection of Poe's work, basically highlighting a lot of his lesser known, lesser published essays, letters, and poems, and a lot of them talked about his scientific beliefs and theories, and this book is going to delve into not only the life of Poe, but a lot of his scientific beliefs that ended up being more than accurate, to say the least. Poe may be known as a poet, he may be known as like the father of macabre in literature, but he was a really, really brilliant man and had an eye for science, and this book talks quite a lot about that. Alright, next up is Escape from Alcatraz by J. Campbell Bruce. I actually have started reading this book. I've only read like a chapter, but I recently visited Alcatraz in San Fran. I have an entire video on that. And I wanted to pick this book up because, again, I really like true crime, and I think this is very, very interesting, and I will read the back of the book for you. So it says, Mobster Al Scarface Capone, Machine Gun Kelly, Robert Stroud, a.k.a. the Birdman. Only the most violent, desperate criminals were sent to Alcatraz Island, the Rock, where prison conditions were so harsh that escape, riot, even death were an inmate's only hope. This special reissue will introduce a new generation of readers to J. Campbell Bruce's gripping account of life on the Rock and the ingenious escape attempts from its prisoners, most notably Frank Morris, whose daring plan was the basis for the memorable 1979 Clint Eastwood film Escape from Alcatraz. For those of you guys who do not know, Frank and 2 other accomplices may or may not have successfully escaped from Alcatraz prison. We are still unsure of what their fate was, if they escaped, if they died getting off of the island. And this book is going to explore that. I was able to see their cells when I visited Alcatraz. It was really, really cool, along with the escape route that they use, which is still sort of semi-preserved to this day. So I would love to read that and learn more about that. Okay, I don't know if I've ever spoken about this book on my channel before. Please excuse the strand sticker. I've had this book, oh my god, since 2015. And I started reading it, and I read like half of it, like 120 pages it looks like. Back in 2015, so I don't remember a lot of it. But this is Dr. Mutter's Marvels by Kristen O'Keefe Aptowitz. If you've ever been to Philly and heard of the Mutter Museum, this is him of Mutter Museum fame. Pretty much a pioneer in like plastic surgery as we know it today. The Mutter Museum is one of the coolest museums I've ever been to. It's super creepy, it's super disturbing, it's super morbid curiosity, but it's awesome. And this is kind of a biography on him. So I will read the back of the book for y'all. America in the early 1800s was an easy place to die, especially for those unlucky souls so severely deformed that medicine at the time literally classified them as monsters. Enter Thomas Dent Mutter, a brilliant and audacious young mid-19th century plastic surgeon who revolutionized American medicine with his daring surgical work, pioneering the use of anesthesia, championing the sterilization of surgical tools, and advocating for a compassion-based vision for helping even the most seemingly hopeless of patients, despite intense resistance from his numerous rivals. With Dr. Mutter's Marvels, author Kristen O'Keefe Aptowitz gives us both a front row seat to the good, the bad, and the grotesque of the evolution of American medicine and a riveting biography of a man so flamboyant in life and in the operating theater that he would be crowned the P.T. Barnum of the surgery room. So yeah, I'm very excited to go back and read this. I remember really, really loving this book when I first got it. I'm fairly certain I was reading it and then I got dumped and I stopped reading it because I was just really, really sad. So this was like 6 or 7 years ago. But yes, so very, very, very excited to dive back into this one. Okay, so this one's not technically nonfiction, but it's also not technically fiction. So we're just gonna go with it's on this list. And this is, you've probably heard of, The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson, which tells the story of the architect behind the Chicago World's Fair and the notorious serial killer, that's a debatable term, mass murderer, H.H. Holmes. So I'll read the back for y'all really quickly. Bringing Chicago circa 1893 to vivid life, Erik Larson's spellbinding bestseller intertwines the true tale of two men. The brilliant architect behind the legendary 1893 World's Fair, striving to secure America's place in the world, and the cunning serial killer who used the fair to lure his victims to their death. Combining meticulous research with nail-biting storytelling, Erik Larson has crafted a narrative with all the wonder of the newly discovered history and the thrills of the best fiction. This is another book I started reading years ago when it first came out, and then stopped for some reason. I remember being kind of bored with it, but I also, wow, my copy is so damaged, sorry. But I also remember being kind of like not in a good reading headspace when I was reading this as well. So I'm interested to give this another try because I've noticed that sometimes when I'm in like a bad headspace and I start reading something, I end up not liking it. And at the time that I first got this, I didn't know who H.H. Holmes was. And I have since listened to numerous podcasts, watched multiple documentaries, and I'm really fascinated with H.H. Holmes. This video, I believe, is going up on Thursday, and I'll be coming actually back from Chicago, so the White City. Right after this video is up, I'm going to visit some friends out there for a couple of days. Don't know if I'm going to do any H.H. Holmes things, but I'm definitely looking into it. But yeah, so I really want to give this a shot again. Not sure if it'll click with me this time, but there's also a really interesting like biography on H.H. Holmes that I think I'm going to buy as well. I believe Adam Seltzer is the author. And then there's also Ripper Confidential, and I forget who the author is on that I really, really want to get, and it's debunking the theory that Jack the Ripper is H.H. Holmes. So definitely interested in that. And that's written by a famous ripperologist, but I don't remember his name off the top of my head. Anyhow, I have 3 more books for y'all. So first up is The World of Lore, Monstrous Creatures by Erin Monke. I believe Lore is a podcast. My stepdad bought me this. I'm very excited to read it. I believe I read 1 chapter in it when I first got it, if that. I might have only listened to the podcast once. I don't know. But the inside of the book. They live in shadows, deep in the forest, late in the night, in the dark recesses of our minds. They're spoken of in stories and superstitions, relic of an unenlightened age, old wives' tales passed down through generations. Yet no matter how wary and jaded we have become, as individuals or as a society, a part of us remains vulnerable to them. Werewolves and wendigos, poltergeists and vampires, angry elves and vengeful spirits. In this beautifully illustrated volume, the host of the hit podcast Lore serves as a guide on a fascinating journey through the history of these terrifying creatures, exploring not only the legends, but what they tell us about ourselves. Erin Monke invites us to the desolate Pine Barrens of New Jersey, where the notorious winged, red-eyed Jersey Devil dwells. He delves into harrowing accounts of cannibalism, some officially documented, others the stuff of speculation, perhaps. He visits the dimly lit rooms where seances take place, the European villages where gremlins make mischief, even Key West, Florida, home of the haunted doll named Robert. In a world of emotional vampires and zombie malls, the monsters of folklore have become both a part of our language and a part of our collective psyche. Whether these beasts and boogeyman are real or just a reflection of our primal fears, we know on some level that not every mystery has been explained, and that the unknown still holds the power to strike fear deep in our hearts and souls. As Erin Monke reminds us, sometimes the truth is even scarier than the lore. So I've owned this for a while, but I haven't really dove into it. I know that there are 3 books in this series, and I have the first one, and I oddly have the third one. And this is The World of Lore, Dreadful Places, also by Erin Monke. And the reason I have the first one is simply because somebody gifted it to me, and the reason I have the second one is because I read Colin Dickey's Ghostland at the very end of the year, the very beginning. I read it at the very beginning of this year. Loved that and wanted to read another book on haunted places, and this one kept popping up. So I was like, you know what? I already have book 1. Why not buy book 3? They're all separate topics. I forget what book 2 is. But we have monsters, and then we have haunted places. So I've actually started reading this. I'm only a chapter in, though. It's just like the Alcatraz book. But this one is, sometimes you walk into a room, a building, or even a town, and you feel it. Something seems off, an atmosphere that leaves you oddly unsettled with a sense of lingering darkness. Join Aaron Monkey, the host of the popular podcast Lore, as he explores some of these dreadful places and the history that haunts them. Monkey takes us to Colorado and the palatial Stanley Hotel. Oh, have that right there. Where wealthy guests enjoyed views of the Rocky Mountains at the turn of the 20th century, and where decades later a restless author would awaken from a nightmare, inspired to write one of the most revered horror novels of all time. Monkey also crosses land and sea to visit frightful sights from New Orleans to Richmond, Virginia, to the brooding ancient castles of England, each with its own echoes of dark deeds, horrible tragedies, and shocking evil still resounding. Filled with evocative illustrations, this eerie tour of lurid landmarks and doomed destinations is just the ticket to take armchair travelers with a taste for the macabre to places they never thought they'd visit in their wildest, scariest dreams. So yeah, so that is also one. I will hopefully be finishing this up sometime this year as well. And then last but not least, because I can't do anything without talking about Stephen King, and this book just mentioned Stephen King, we have Danse Macabre. So I picked this up because I think On Writing, which is sort of Stephen King's autobiography, is like one of the greatest things I've ever read. It's by far the best autobiography I've ever read, if you even want to call it that. So I never read his nonfiction before, and I adored it, and I found out that he had this as well, so I really, really, really wanted to pick this up. So this one is, long before he gave us a one-of-a-kind classic, with his best-selling memoir On Writing, Stephen King crafted a nonfiction masterpiece in Danse Macabre, one of the best books on American popular culture. The author, whose boundless imagination and storytelling powers have redefined the horror genre, from 1974's Carrie to his new epic Under the Dome, reflects on the very nature of terror, what scares us and why, in films, both cheesy and choice, television and radio, and of course, the horror novel past and present. Informal, engaging, tremendous fun, and tremendously informative, Danse Macabre is an essential tour with the master of horror as your guide. Much like his spellbinding works of fiction, you won't be able to put it down. So this came out in 2010. Well, this original book came out in 1981, but this copy came out in 2010. And so it has an added note from the author. And so I don't really know what is going to be in here. I'm assuming it's going to have a lot of like old school horror. Like I'm really hoping it talks about like the Universal monsters and like Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, The Omen, all of like the greats of like even Nosferatu, right? So we can start with like the 20s up until the 80s. I'm assuming we'll miss a lot of slashers. Maybe like Friday the 13th will make it in here, and obviously Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But I really don't know. So I'm really excited to read this. Again, I love Stephen King. He's my favorite author of all time. But there's just something interesting about hearing him talk about horror as a craft. And I would love to see his take on film, especially because a lot of his books get turned into films. So yes, that is my nonfiction TBR. Hopefully I get to a bunch of these books within the next year or so. Again, I'm so bad with nonfiction. I can sit and read a fiction novel in 3 days and just be like super satisfied, but for some reason I have to do like chapter by chapter with nonfiction. I can't just binge read them. So I do struggle with that. But yeah, really, really want to get to a lot of these very, very soon. Already working on a few of them. Definitely have a few mapped out for the next coming months as well. But thanks again so much for watching. As always, I post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. Saturdays are going to be a lot less recently, basically because I'm going away. I was in Rhode Island last week. I'm going to be Chicago this weekend, and then I'm going to Germany, and London, and Dublin, and then Salem. So I'm going to be on a lot of trips, so there might not be that many Saturday videos for the first half of the summer, but just so you guys know. Anyways, again, thanks you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed these videos, hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you all in the next one. Mwah!